everyone. Welcome to Articulate Your Value. This is the negotiation workshop for ambitious women. Even though everything I'm going to teach you, it works for all genders. Okay, so let's get started. My name is Jamie Lee. I'm a certified executive coach, and here's what I do. I help smart women who hate office politics get promoted and better paid without throwing anyone under the bus. And you're going, but how do you do that? How is that even possible? Here's how. I teach the best of mutual benefit negotiation strategies from a feminist perspective, married with practical neuroscience. And the reason for that is because negotiation is just a series of conversations. It's just conversations, right? And you want to do it in a way that is fully cognizant, aware of the invisible context in which we operate. But we also want to be able to do it in a way that helps us overcome or work through the inner workings of our brains, because the brain is what creates strategy. The brain is what creates communication plans. The brain is the source of our feelings, thoughts, actions, and therefore the results that we create. So this workshop is intended for mid-career women and people of all genders, non-binary, male. You could all benefit from these strategies, but I have in mind, like I was thinking about the clients that I serve, and right now it's middle of July 2023, and some of y'all have already had your mid-year review, but some of y'all are in the process of getting prepared for a mid-year review, right? And you're thinking about, how do I set myself up for success? How do I set myself up for success so that I do secure the promotion, the raise, or additional resources that's going to help me succeed and grow in my career. And so that's the agenda. That's the focus of this conversation. And today I want to walk you through why so many of us struggle in advocating, negotiating for what we want in our careers. And I want to talk to you about how you can get out of what I call the 3A trap. I'm going to walk you step by step through the 3-circle model for making a compelling ask. And I'm going to teach you the one question that has every single one of my clients getting a resounding yes. Once you hear it, you'll be like, oh, I get it. It can be so simple, right? And some of y'all want to know, how can I ensure I do take action? Because I do know that when I negotiate, when I advocate, and I claim credit for my wins, that's how I grow. That's how I signal my leadership, right? And you want to do it in a way that ensures you take the best action and you see yourself all the way through to the results that you want. So for those of you who are interested in that, I'm going to make you an offer and I'll tell you about that. And of course, there will be time for Q&A. So just a few administrative things. Y'all are already using the Q&A box. You see that Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom interface. You can click on that to submit your questions. I see some of you already doing it. I see some of you already doing it. So that's great. I'm going to answer them. I'm going to address all of them one by one at the end. All right. And the reason for that, I was telling everyone before I hit record, because I get easily distracted. So if I use chat function, I'm like, oh, where do I look, right? So that's the only reason I am using the Q&A box to communicate with you today. All right. So yes, there will be a replay emailed to you within 24 hours. You're going to look for it in your inbox. I know some of you have to go to another meeting. I get it. You have to go, run your errands. No worries. Now, I've been teaching self-advocacy and negotiation skills especially to women professionals for 11 years. And in my experience, I have seen thousands of women and minorities in the workplace under communicate our wins. And I'm including myself. I'm a woman, I'm a minority. I was born in South Korea. I'm an immigrant, person of color, right? And I've noticed myself too, before I learned these strategies, before I learned these mindset tools, I noticed I was under communicating my wins and my wants. That's why I'm including myself in that, right? Overcommitting, overworking, thinking that if I keep working really hard, somebody will see, somebody will recognize, somebody will give me the reward that I want. And I've noticed that so many people are under promoted. And that's partly due to lack of skill and confidence, and also partly due to systemic injustices. Gender bias is real, sexism is real. I mean, these are things that my clients, that I have also encountered in my career. So I don't want to deny that's not. I don't want to say that's not real, but also partly because I didn't have the skill in my past. I didn't have the confidence in how to advocate for myself effectively. So the question is, why so many of us? Why do so many of us struggle? And here's how I think about it, right? We have been socialized to keep our head down. We've been socialized and conditioned to not have the skill, to not advocate, to not negotiate, to not see ourselves in control of our negotiation outcomes, our careers, our earnings, right? And the socialization, it starts from a very, very young age. I've heard that there's research that shows that our money mindset is something that we have, something that is a result of our socialization, our conditioning by the age 7, right? So it's everything that we get exposed to when we were very young, from our parents, from society, from authority figures, from our peers, from the world, and then, including schooling, right? We know that women are excellent students. Women are excellent in the education system. There's more women coming out with degrees now than men. But the socialization leads to habituated or unconscious patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Like, think about way back when. This is gonna age me, okay? But I gotta go for it. Do you remember way back when you had to, really try? You really had to make an effort to memorize your new friend's phone number, right? So that was conscious programming. We're consciously trying to program into our brains the phone number of our new friend so that we could just dial them up. Remember, like dial phone, right? We had to punch number one at a time. But there's unconscious patterning, which is you do it so many times, that repeated pattern, right? And when we are young, our brains are so malleable, and we're so much more, that pattern gets ingrained in us so much more faster than when we're older, right? That once it becomes unconscious, you don't have to think about it. It's just like auto dial, like your fingers are moving on their own. Right? And so when you think about unconscious patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving, I also think about how, like, Instagram, I don't have to think about it. Sometimes I just pick up my phone, I'm not thinking, and all of a sudden I notice I'm like scrolling for like the past 5 minutes. I'm like, what am I doing? What do I even want to be here, right? So unconscious patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving is something that we all experience. And it's not bad, it's not good, but what is the effect? What is the effect of that on our confidence, on our negotiation confidence? What is the socialization, right? And we want to recognize that there's been millennia, thousands and thousands of years in which, women had to survive in patriarchal societies. Still do. Right? And that millennia of patriarchal conditioning has us, number one, feeling responsible for other people's feelings, second guessing our own desires, our decisions. Can I really ask for that much? Is it okay if I want to make a lot more money? Is it okay if I want to be promoted? Is it all right? Maybe I should second guess myself. Maybe I need to talk and like consult all of my friends before I feel like it's okay for me to totally own what I want in my career, in my life, right? And also waiting for external validation instead of taking credit for our wins. So how does this show up specifically in negotiation in terms of self-advocacy in the workplace? Here's what I notice. Here's a pattern that I notice over and over and over again. The avoid, the appease, the attack cycle. And here's what I mean by this. You avoid engaging in those conversations. Remember what I said, negotiation is just a series of conversations. And I think it's a series of conversations, with the intention of leading to agreement. And what is agreement? Agreement is just a decision. It's just a joint decision. Or sometimes, the outcome of negotiation is that like, I decide how I'm going to take action from here, right? But a lot of people avoid these conversations. And instead, they appease, they accommodate, they say, okay, whatever you want. Okay, you want to add more work onto my plate? You want me to do this? You want me to, do project 3, 4, and 5, and now 6, without any conversation about like how it's going to impact my growth trajectory, about compensation, without a bonus? Okay, all right, yeah. Or attack. And by that, which I really mean, sometimes you blame others, sometimes you reject people, but really attack isn't like you beat yourself up. Yeah. And this 3A trap looks like comfort fallacy, tiara syndrome, perfectionist fantasy. So how do you know whether you're in comfort fallacy, tiara syndrome, or perfectionist fantasy? As you can imagine, comfort fallacy is about like, oh, I need to be comfortable and I need to ensure that everyone else around me is comfortable, even though inside I'm a little like resentful, frustrated, and disappointed. Or tiara syndrome is when you think that you're supposed to keep your head down and do good work, and somebody's gonna come and reward you with a tiara, just like in a Disney fairy tale, although we don't live in fairy tales. And perfectionist fantasy, something that I have seen over and over and over again in so many smart, competent women of color, like I have to do it just right, it has to be A+, or it's a fail. If it's not just perfect, then it wasn't good enough. Even though so many workplaces, so the reality of our workplace is that everyone is sort of making it up. Everyone is trying to figure it out as they go. So how do you know? How do you know if you're in one of these, the 3A trap? Comfort fallacy. Are you telling yourself, you know what? I'm afraid they might get upset that I asked for what I want. Yeah, because I can't have anyone upset that I took a risk for myself, that I advocated for what I wanted. Or are you telling yourself, if I keep my head down, they should reward me. If I keep my head down and just be good, they should be recognizing it because it should be obvious to them. Or are you telling yourself, if I don't do it perfect, that I'm not good enough? Yeah. And notice I wrote here on top, myths, fallacies, and lies. Remember I talked about unconscious programming and how like over time, like, you can just recall the number without even consciously thinking about it. Your head, your body is just automatically punching the numbers on a keypad, right? You're calling your friend, right? So sometimes these myths, these fallacies, these fantasies, these thoughts, they just come to us because it has become an unconscious pattern. And then we start thinking, this is just who I am, not because these thoughts, this fallacy, the syndrome, the fantasy is real, but only because it has become like a well-worn like a groove, right? A rut that your brain immediately goes to without consciously thinking through, actually, what if it's true that if I did speak up and had an honest, transparent conversation about how I want to be recognized and the value that I'm bringing, they would be glad, they would be grateful, right? And what if there is no perfect? There's just effort, there is just iteration, there is just conversation, right? And what if you realize and really thought through that actually, if I keep my head down, nothing's going to happen. So here's what I want to suggest to you. My 3 core philosophies around this is, instead of being stuck in comfort fallacy, let's be courageous. And what is courage? Courage is doing it afraid. And when you're doing it afraid, not because you're doing it wrong, not because you're going to get in trouble, but only because you are encountering that unconscious pattern, right? You're building a new neural pathway, and it's just slightly awkward in the beginning, right? And so what if you told yourself, yeah, I'm going to be courageous, and if I feel awkward, it's a sign I'm doing it right, right? I'm trying to override millennia of patriarchal conditioning, yeah? And it's not about whether I fail or win, it's about whether I learn or I win. Just this morning, I read this really inspiring story about this person, this young man who has Down syndrome, and he completed the Ironman with his parents' help. And his parents, what they did was they designed for him a training schedule where they would just look for 1% improvement every day. Every training is like just one more push-up than you did before, right? Just one more, I guess, cycle than you did before. Just one more mile than before, right? And that's how he was able to run the Ironman. Now he's going to go run 6 marathons around the world, right? And so if he told you, if this person told himself, oh, if I can't do it perfect, then it's a total failure, he would have never completed this amazing, mind-boggling win. It's because that person was focused on that 1% gain, right? And that's how you also grow your neuroplasticity. That's how you also change your brain. We're looking for 1-degree turns. And so what would be your 1-degree turn in terms of how you show up, how you negotiate, how you advocate for what you want in your career, in your life? And that's because I'm going to talk about that wheel drive emoji, the hands on the wheels. It's like your career is in your control, right? When we're in tiara syndrome, it's like we're waiting for somebody else's acknowledgement because somebody else is in control, right? So when you reclaim that self-sovereignty, when you reclaim that control that you have over your career, your life, right? And you advocate and you start engaging, initiating those conversations, it's very responsible driving on your part, right? And it also becomes an act of service. And I'm going to tell you in just a little bit, the framework, how you make your self-advocacy in the workplace, whether it is a one-on-one with your boss or a performance review or even like a job interview, how you can make articulating your values something that they're grateful for, something that they say, thank you for bringing this up. Thank you for articulating your value, advocating for yourself in this way. Let's keep going. Let's keep discussing this. Okay, that's the feedback that my clients get because they're willing to do it awkward and be courageous, and they're willing to flex the neuroplasticity of their brains. Having said that, I am going to now walk you through a technique that's so simple, so easy, okay? But now, before I go there, I want you to think about one ask. What is one ask that you can make? What will be that 1-degree improvement from where you are now? Is it initiating a one-on-one with your boss? Is it asking for additional resources on that project? Is it, I don't know, is it maybe asking a colleague for some support? Or maybe it's a conversation that you have outside of your career. I'm just gonna ask you, I'm gonna ask you to hop into the Q&A box. Some of y'all, if you have an idea of what's that one thing that you want to ask for, pop it into the Q&A box. And then I'm going to walk you through this pattern interrupt. All right, yeah. Work remotely part-time, for example. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. So while the rest of you, okay, yes. So another one, remote work for a potential job. Okay. So when you think about making that ask, what comes up? And sometimes it's a little bit of anxiety, right? So now I want to walk you through this pattern interrupt that can reduce your cortisol, your stress hormone, that can engage your parasympathetic nervous system, which is associated with rest and digest. It helps you increase testosterone, which is associated with more assertiveness, risk-taking, confidence. And it's something that you can easily practice on your own anywhere at any time. And it's something that I would recommend that you practice for just a minute. That's it. It's so simple. Just a minute in private, ahead of a high stakes conversation, or whenever you want to, just have a little bit more agency over in your emotions and you want to reduce your anxiety. More equity in the company, salary negotiation, asking for resources, asking for my role to be reshaped, a new job opportunity. Okay, excellent. So I am going to pause the share because I want to show you exactly what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to pause the share. And wow, I'm like really sweaty today. It's a hot day in New York City. All right. So I'm going to get up for this exercise. I'm going to demonstrate to you, and you are more than welcome. I invite you to follow along with me, but it's also something that you can practice if you just happen to be in the office and you don't want to seem like you're doing something weird. You can also do it sitting down. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to stand, and I'm going to ask you to stand with your feet slightly wider than your hips distance. So it's a little bit like a yoga pose, right? Because as soon as you do that and you try to stand tall, right, like a tree, you notice your core is engaged. And now with your hips, your legs a little wider than your hips distance, you're going to do what my dance teachers say, happy armpits. And that simply is like a power pose, right? Like a Wonder Woman pose. And there's ample space underneath your armpit. So if you're standing with me, I invite you to do this. But if you're sitting down, you can also do this next part. Now, I'm going to ask you to look away from the screen. Don't look at me. I'm going to ask you to pick a point on your wall or whatever you're looking at, a fixed focal point, and really focus on that point. And notice what that's like. And now, without moving your eyes, bring just your awareness or your attention to the periphery of your vision. So when I do this, I start noticing my bookcase to my left, windows to my right. I start noticing the ambient noise in my home office. I start feeling the sensation of carpet underneath my feet. And just keep your eyes on that focal point, just your awareness shifted to the periphery of your vision, almost as if you can feel the energy of the space behind you. What's that like for you? What are you noticing there? And now, bring your attention to your feet And imagine that roots are growing out from underneath your feet, helping you be grounded, supported, rooted in this moment, here and now. And what my clients tell me when I walk them through this exercise is that they immediately feel the shift of the mind chatter quieting down. And they start to feel the calm sensation in their body. Okay, so that's it. That is my take, my version of the power pose. Brandy says, I look amazing. Thank you, Brandy. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation here. So this is something that you can practice on your own to reduce your cortisol, to engage your parasympathetic nervous system. I feel a shift. I was just walking you through it and I just like, ooh, I feel a little bit more grounded. I'm here, a little bit more present, right? And it's something that you can practice on your own, whether ahead of the conversation or whenever you want to just create that calm, quiet that mind chatter. And as you feel that calm, now ask yourself, how do you want to be? How do you want to feel? How do you want to engage in those conversations that can have an impact on your career growth? Okay, what do we do from here? And I'm just gonna guess that some of you want to feel proud. You want to feel proud, you want to feel confident of the work that you have already done. And for that reason, this is the first key step, the first action step that I advise you to do. Are you taking stock of your wins, right? In negotiation, in workplace, in salary negotiation, you want to be able to make an argument for the measurable value that you are bringing. Are you somebody who has the capacity to grow the organization's revenues, profits, client retention? And I have some clients who work in nonprofits, and also in nonprofits, they need to grow revenues. They need to raise funding, right? That's what development, that's what email campaigns and marketing, that's all about, right? Because you need money to be able to do the work of the nonprofit. And even more so in a for-profit organization. Are you helping to reduce costs, risks, errors? Are you helping to improve efficiencies? Are you helping to save time for decision makers? I once negotiated when I was a part-time bookkeeper. Before I became a full-time coach, I had some part-time jobs, and one of my part-time jobs was bookkeeping. And I was consulting for a tech startup. And I made my case. I made my case for a competitive retention fee by saying, I'm going to save you, the CEO, the busy CEO, I'm going to save you 20 hours of your work hours every month, so that your 20 hours are freed up for you to make decisions that drive the growth of your organization. It's like, okay, great. Yeah. How are you contributing to key initiatives? Sometimes people are like, but I don't work in sales. I don't do like metric driven things, but are you contributing to customer satisfaction? Are you contributing to employee retention? Because that's also value. That helps the company save lots and lots of money. There is the statistic that when somebody leaves, especially somebody like you, somebody who works with their brains, when you leave your job, right, the company has to spend up to 200% of your annual salary to recruit, then to replace, then to onboard and train your replacement. So if you are contributing to client retention, employee retention, that is also measurable value. And also, if you don't own the wins, if you don't own these measurable wins, right, somebody else will take credit for it. You know that already, right? And here's a story that I want to share with you. I want you to watch out for Tiara syndrome. when you take stock of your wins. Once upon a time, I was an employee at a beauty company. It was a company that it was pretty young. It was like a startup, and they were creating these beauty and spa products. And I was the procurement person, and I came up with a plan that was going to save the company $100,000 in packaging costs, right? I'm going to help them reduce costs in this plan. It was smart, it was innovative, I was proud. But then I took stock of my wins, and then I put on tiara syndrome because I thought, this is such a great win. I don't have to ask for a promotion. It's so obvious to the senior management that this is a great win. It was a small company, so even though it was $100,000 in cost savings, it would have been like 10%, right, of their costs, of their bottom line. So I'm like, that's so big. I don't have to ask. I got to present this in front of the board, right? They brought me in, and I got to do this whole show, and like people, praise me. They're gonna give me a raise. They're gonna give me a promotion. No, they didn't. Because unless you articulate, you first take stock of your wins so that you can feel proud, you can build that self-confidence, but you also have to take action, right? So let's talk about how value is in the eye of the beholder, right? There is undeniable, measurable, quantifiable value that you are contributing to, that you can take credit for, but also often that value, that professional value that you are creating with your skill, effort, idea is not always perceived by the manager, the decision maker, the potential employer, because value, like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. There is some subjectivity. And so in order to get to a place where you can strategically articulate that value, you want to get curious with yourself. What do my manager, decision maker, potential employer, what do they most care about? What seem to be their top goals, priorities, or values? What do they most often talk about? What are they working to achieve or avoid in the future? And why might it be? Right? So you want to get curious about their perspective, their priorities, their goals, right? Because we're trying to work towards a compelling case for the value you bring, a compelling case for what you want to ask for. And so I want to think about, we're working towards the 3 circles, but let's first start with your contributions, right? You take stock of that. That's the first circle, which is your professional value. And then there's the second circle, their goals, their priorities, right? And the more overlap there is, as you can see in this slide, the higher the perceived value of your current or future contributions. And that's because your managers, your potential or current employers, when they think about you, when they assess your contributions, they're imagining, they're looking ahead into the future in their minds. They're doing it almost unconsciously. They're thinking, what can their contributions, their skills, what can that do for what I'm trying to achieve or what the organization is trying to achieve? They're imagining the future impact of your contributions beyond what you already gotten done. Right? What you've gotten done is what's already done. It's kind of water under the bridge, but they're thinking about the future. What will it do for our goals, right? So you want to intentionally, strategically grow your perceived value by helping them see the connection more clearly. That's how we get to strategic value articulation. You are already adding value, undeniably. Are you showing up on time? That's what a professional does. That's valuable, right? You existing in the world, that's valuable. But perceived value exists in their mind, in their brains, right? So in order for them to better understand it, you have to be strategic about how you articulate that value. You want to get curious about what is it they want and what is something they don't want, right? And help them see how your contributions lead to more of what they want and less of what they don't want. And you want to get curious, you want to listen for what is the language they speak? What words do they speak? I just coached a client of mine who was negotiating with a chief compliance officer, and the chief compliance officer says words like governance is really important, even though, they could say things like, documentation, being thorough, and having a great culture. That's different ways of describing governance, but to this person, governance is important. So we're like, okay, let's take note of that, and let's make sure we connect the dot, right? We connect the dot between what you are doing and what you're capable of doing in the future will help to create even greater, even better governance in the future. That's why you shift your language to the future. And I'm going to show you in the next slide exactly how you can do that by using phrases like so that, or this is what becomes possible. This will make possible blank, which is your goal, your desire, the beyond benefit that you want, right? And remember, the pitfalls are perfectionist fantasy, comfort fallacy, tiara syndrome. And sometimes my clients are like, okay, how do I say it just right? There's no perfect way to do this. There is no perfect way. There is no perfection. We're just looking for progress, right? What we want, what you want to do is be willing to acknowledge their core concerns. And it's going to be really strategic. And it's going to be really smart if you can use their language so they feel like they've been heard, right? So let me give you some concrete examples with this really simple framework. What is it that you do? A key contribution. And notice I use active verbs. Notice I'm using the present tense, right? It's like everything that you've done, it's been amazing, right? But here's what you do now, and here's what you will do in the future so that blank, what they most want, can happen in the future. These are two examples from my actual clients. One client, she is an investigator, right? And she's an investigator, and she's really good at making human-to-human connections. And so she builds bridges with qualified clients so that her firm can have higher number of clients who pay a higher rate. And she chose to articulate it in this way because this is the need of her firm. They need higher number of clients who pay a higher rate. They need more revenue. And she's articulating, I'm going to bring this skill, this contribution to you so you can have greater growth, right? And do it faster with clients that you love to have who pay a higher rate. Here's another example from a client who is a data scientist. And, her statement was, I bridged the gap between data science and business so that our company stays ahead of the competition. And for her, it was her willingness to articulate to her stakeholders, decision makers, that she understands the core business need, which is to stay ahead of the competition so that they can maintain their high stock price, right? That stock price is important for shareholders, right? And from here, when you articulate your value in a strategic way, now you tell them those key metrics. Now you tell them the stories, the data, the evidence, and the future plan that you have that is most relevant to their desire, their goal. And notice that I added this hands-on driving wheel icon here. And that's because by using this active present tense language, you're owning to yourself, I drive results, right? And I have the car pointed in the direction of where my employer, my manager, where they most want to go. And I'm aligned in that direction. You don't have to have achieved, getting to the end result just yet. Being pointed in that direction, being aligned is so much valuable already. So much value right there. Okay, so here's the key question that every single one of my clients when they implement this process, when they work on their mindset, right? When they unwind the socialization, when they stop themselves from falling into tiara syndrome, perfectionist fantasy, comfort fallacy, when they take stock of their contributions, when they really gotten curious about the perspective, the goals, the priorities of the other side, the manager, the employer, right? And articulated their value in this empowered way. Now, when they ask this question, it never fails. Every single one of my clients has gotten a resounding yes. And that question is, would you agree I'm adding value? How could they say no? Right? And here's what you're doing. You're saying, hey, are we aligned here? Are we like, we're reaffirming this overlap. And I'm reaffirming that I understand how my value is perceived, and we're on the same page about the perception of that value, right? So when they say yes, now you're able to follow that up. But you might be thinking, what if they say no? And I want to tell you, if they say no, that is still of value to you, because if you're not aligned on whether you're adding value or not, I would want to know. If I were in your shoes, I would want to know ASAP. I would want to know right now, what do we need to change? What do we need to work on? What needs to shift? Where are we not in agreement? That's something that, is paramount. That's something that you want to address as soon as possible, right? But if they say no, you could also get curious instead of getting furious. Like I said, you could ask these open-ended questions. What would need to change so that we are aligned on what adds value? And just remember, if you encounter any sort of pushback, any sort of hesitation, anything less than an enthusiastic yes right away, it does not mean that you did it wrong. Companies, organizations are complex organizations. There are lots of people. You're actually engaging in multi-party negotiation where they have to consult a decision maker or they have to consult the stakeholder, right? It's a process. It's never a one-off conversation. Hardly. Sometimes it is, but it's unusual. And your career is your vehicle to drive. That's why you have your hands on the wheel, right? And if you don't like what you are learning through this conversation, you also get to decide, because your career is in your control, your vehicle to drive. But like I said, most of the time they say yes. So that's when you say, I'm glad you agree, right? Now you're bringing that positivity to the conversation. It doesn't have to be confrontational at all. It doesn't have to be adversarial at all, right? That's why now you bring that third circle, your goals. I'm glad you agree. I'm glad we're on the same page, that we're adding value, that I'm adding value. And my intention is to continue to do so. And what's important to me is to be valued, recognized for the value, for the contributions that I'm adding here. That's why I like to ask for $20,000 salary increase, for that additional hire, for flexibility in where and how I work, because when I have those things, I'm able to help you even better. I'm better equipped to help help address our shared goals. I had a little brain fart for a second. Okay. And then you ask, what are your thoughts, right? And then you pause and you ask, what are your thoughts then, okay? So with that said, that is the training. And let's summarize, right? You want to interrupt patterns of avoiding, appeasing, attacking yourself. You want to build confidence by taking stock of your contributions. And you want to build intentionally the skill of self-validation, the skill of celebrating for yourself, feeling proud of what you have done, feeling proud of the impact that you are creating now and into the future, right? You want to get smart, you want to get strategic in how you shape your perceived value, because you bring professional value. There's no denying that. but how is that value perceived? Like one of my clients, she was surprised when in coaching, she realized she did not need to do more work. She thought that she had to work really hard and perfect these spreadsheets and reports and analyses. She thought that's how she's going to get promoted. But in coaching, she realized actually it was more about doing some strategic communication and being seen in a way as a solution provider, as somebody who has a solution that's going to help the company achieve their future goals. That's all she had to do. She had to and I'll tell you exactly what it was. She created an opportunity for people to come to her and ask questions. She set up office hours, and she was shocked. She's like, "Oh yeah, that's how I grew my perceived value. I did not have to do more work or try to perfect these things, burn myself out. I just had to engage people and be seen in that way as a leader, as a solution provider." And so when you do this, your self-advocacy becomes an act of service. And I want to tell you, this is a concept that is proven by research. Harvard and these leading business schools, Ivy League schools, have done research on gender and negotiation, and they have found that when women use communal benefit, right? In other words, here are our shared goals, and here's how what I'm asking for helps us achieve our shared goals. Not only are the parties, the negotiating parties, more satisfied by the outcomes, it helps to improve your perception as a leader. It helps you be seen as a leader, so you get promoted while being appreciated for how you have communicated and taken credit for your contributions. And also, we get curious. We get curious about their perspective. We get curious about that no, not furious, right? Having agency in your emotions means that you have agency in the negotiation process. And doing so, you build muscle for creative problem solving and you get past no. So all of these things are the things that my clients work on inside the one-on-one coaching series. These are the results that my one-on-one coaching series is designed to help you create. And if that's something that you would like for yourself, so that you can habitually change the well, let me rephrase that, so that you can change how you habitually advocate and negotiate for yourself, how habitually you show up as a leader, how habitually you take risks in your career, how habitually you offer solutions and you initiate and you engage with decision makers, stakeholders, influencers, so that you grow your leadership presence, so that you grow your self-confidence. If that's what you want, you're invited to book a free 60-minute Blueprint to Confidence session. It is a consultation, and you're going to gain clarity on what a coaching series with me will look like, so you can make the best decision for you. So if you scan this QR code, if you're watching this on your desktop and you bring up your mobile phone to scan this QR code, it's going to link you to this URL, calendly.com/JamieLee/consult, where you'll be able to book time directly on my calendar. Here's what you get in the consultation. You get a safe and confidential space for you to connect with me one-on-one, where you get guided through an intake, kind of like when you go to the doctor's office, so that I can assess for you the best strategies and tools specifically that's going to help in your unique situation, including the ones that I didn't get to in today's presentation. And you get to assess, you get to decide whether coaching is a slam dunk fit for you or not. That's okay. And what do you get inside the coaching container? You get my unbiased, personalized perspectives to help point out your blind spots, to help clarify your goals, both short-term and long-term. So you know exactly what you need to do this week, this month, this quarter to help you secure that promotion, that raise for 2023 and beyond. You're going to build lasting self-confidence that people are going to acknowledge and notice. You know, that, and sometimes people call that leadership presence. And you get to create results you want without making you wrong for being who you uniquely are, without shaming you for your intuition, your spidey sense, without trying to squeeze you when you're, you know, well-rounded person, without trying to squeeze you into a square peg. So I'm going to open up the floor to Q&A. See, some people have already popped in some questions, but I'm open to all the questions. And again, to dive deeper with me on anything that we discussed today, or anything that is related to your self-confidence, your self-advocacy, your career strategy, I invite you to book your free consultation with me today. Okay, so you see the Q&A box? I'm going to go through them one by one. Okay, somebody says, I have written a negotiation letter, was ready to send, then a friend sent me your podcast yesterday. Marisol, I appreciate you. I appreciate your friend. Yes, I have a podcast. It's called Negotiate Your Career Growth. And I dive deeper into, you know, how you can navigate or negotiate around unconscious bias in the workplace. I teach specific, you know, strategies and tools. I teach what I teach my clients in that podcast. So thank you for listening. And she says, today's workshop was the strategy being aligned. Very, very cool. Okay, so Marisol says, I need to speak to new VP that took over our team. And in the midst of that, my manager left. The VP does not understand what we do and has hired consultants to revamp our department of 3, right? So this is, again, how the strategies that I've suggested in my presentation will come into play. You want to get curious. What do you suppose the VP most cares about? And if you're not sure, you can open, like, engage and ask that VP a question. What do you most care about? What are your core concerns, right? Help me understand, what is the ideal outcome of you hiring these consultants? Because obviously he's already doing it. So what is the end goal that he has in mind, right? And I think this could be an opportunity for you, Marisol, to articulate to the VP in a way, in language that he or she would understand. I don't want to assume anything about this VP's gender. Maybe they're non-binary, but sometimes when, you know, this situation has happened to my other clients too, when something like this happens, you want to, instead of like thinking about it the way you would have with your manager, who would have been more mindful, more interested in the day-to-day, in the details, in the nuance of what you do, you want to start thinking about, like, okay, what does the VP want to hear? Is it about how he, you know, talks about this with the president? Is it something that is an initiative that you have not been exposed to? So you want to get curious and engage in that conversation so that you can tailor that conversation that you have with the VP or the consultants in a way that is most conducive to them understanding the value of what you have to offer. Somebody anonymous says, I vacillate between tiara syndrome, perfectionist fantasy, mainly tiara. Yeah, and it is not your fault. It is not your fault if you experience tiara syndrome, because we have been conditioned. Like every Disney fairy tale that I have watched, over and over again. Every time I was taught as a young girl to be quiet, to be nice, to be obedient, to, not speak out of turn, right? To, I was born in South Korea. I'm an immigrant, and in South Korea, the patriarchy is like real, it's very patrilineal, like, the inheritance laws, it favors men. I hope it's changing. I don't know, but yeah, I recall like, boys were socialized to be outgoing and, and to be more assertive and to see themselves as in control of their situation. But as young girls, as young women, I was socialized to see myself not in control. So think about that. Tiara syndrome, perfectionist fantasy, comfort fallacy. Who ends up with the control over your voice, your choices, your decisions? Who ends up with that control when you let yourself just, stay, when you don't take yourself out of that mindset? It's the patriarchy, it's somebody else, right? So when we become aware of it, we make new choices, it's reclaiming control. And studies have found, psychologists have found, that when you have a sense of control in your life, in your career, when you have that sense of agency, you're more likely to negotiate. And the more you negotiate, the more you get. So thank you for sharing that, Anonymous. Okay. I'm just going down. So Brandy asked, should we explicitly ask management whether we're adding value? And again, I want to say yes, and it's a nuanced yes. It's a nuanced ask. It's a nuanced yes. You want to get strategic. You want to get curious, right? So I'm just going to. Right? You have taken stock of your contributions. You have gotten curious about what they most care about, what their concerns are, and you're clear on what your goal is and how your goal can also help them achieve what they want. Think about it. If you get to work remotely, I imagine that some of you notice that you're more productive. Right? When you have less distractions and you're like, I guess I just get more stuff done faster, right? That helps the company achieve their goals, yeah? And so when you're cognizant, when you have done this work in this sequence, after you have articulated your value in a way that is, yeah, here it is. When you have articulated your value in a way that is resonant, right? That is acknowledging their core concerns. Yes, that's when you can explicitly ask management whether they agree that you're adding value. It's sort of like pinning them down. Right? Because even if people are unconsciously biased against women in the workplace, if they agree that you are adding value, and that's what the workplace is about, that's what compensation, that's what promotions are about, okay, then now you agree, right? I'm adding value. This is why I'm bringing my request to the table. This is why let's have a conversation about what I want, because it's going to help me be even more motivated. It's going to help me be more clear on being committed to these goals and to achieving them. Brandy, you can find my podcast on my website. You see my URL is here, jamieleecoach.com. You could also go directly to podcast.jamieleecoach.com. I don't yet offer a group session, but thank you for asking. I really appreciate people, suggesting that, and I'm going to keep thinking about it, right? But for now, this is what I offer, because, and the reason for that is because I want to create, the most safe, the most confidential space where you can come and you can tell me anything. You can tell me about what your boss said and you're unhappy about it. You can let me know what your thoughts are. You can tell me, do you want to leave? Do you want to stay? Do you want to, you have all these thoughts? Like, you can tell me anything, right? And for now, I feel the one-on-one container is where women can really just let themselves be seen, heard, acknowledged, because they know no one else is in the room, right? It's just me and you. But yes, I know there are some great group coaching programs, and I've also benefited from group coaching. So I'll keep thinking about it, and maybe I'll offer it next year. Stay tuned. Christina, thank you. Just graduated from college. I feel like I lost my confidence. How do I regain my confidence and not let this affect my job search and interviews? You're very well spoken. I admire how you speak. Christina, I can totally relate to you. When I graduated from Smith College in 2004, it's been almost 20 years ago, I didn't have as much confidence in myself. Right. I really, everything that I teach is because I went through the ringer with not having confidence in myself. I went through the ringer with not knowing how to advocate for myself, not knowing how to negotiate for myself. And here's something that could help, that might help, is that I remember when I had just graduated, I was so full of expectations and thoughts about how I was supposed to be. I had so many, and that's because I wasn't questioning the inputs. You know, when I look at magazines or when I read articles online about these like business titans and amazing women in business, and like, am I supposed to be like that? And I would unconsciously continue to compare myself, and then I'm like, oh, I'm not good enough. I can't compete. I'm not going to be this amazing person who's going to be on the cover of Fortune magazine before they're 30, right? And so I want to offer, like, for me, I think that was something that was really corrosive to my confidence. And so I want to encourage you to think about, like, what if who you are, what if what you are and the experiences that you have right now, there's nothing wrong with it. Right? And everyone's journey is different. Everyone's journey is unique. You have no idea. I'm kind of talking to my younger self right now. Like, I had no idea that the people who are on those glossy magazine covers, you have no idea what they're going through on the inside. You don't know if they're thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm putting up this, this facade, but inside I feel a little shabby inside. We have no idea, right? So I want you to think about, like, what if I can give myself acknowledgement for where I am right here, right now, right? How can I give myself acknowledgement, appreciation for the small steps, that 1% step that I'm taking today, right here, right now? Okay. Anonymous says, can you elaborate more on the details, content of your coaching program? How much are the sessions? By the way, if you go to this link, you'll get the answer. And also the detail, the content of my coaching program. This is another reason why I offer one-on-one, because every coaching program, every coaching relationship is a unique relationship. Like, I have clients who want to work on they want to work with me so that they get promoted into partnership. And so we work on, how do you build that presentation confidence? And I have clients who are working through chaotic reorg at their company, and they just want to feel more grounded. They want to feel more in control. So they make the decision that's right for them. And they feel more confident in that process, right? And so every coaching relationship is unique and different. That's why I offer this consultation, because, I mean, yes, I can offer that in general, right? These are things that pretty much we work on for every client. Interrupt patterns, build new neural networks, build new neuroplasticity in your brain, new ways of being, thinking, feeling, overriding just all the conscious and the mind chatter, but really rewiring the unconscious patterns that you have that you want to change, right? And building self-confidence from the inside out, getting strategic, right? Getting smart, right? Getting smart on what you want, getting strategic on what you want, and what is the quickest way to getting that, without overworking, without, avoiding, without appeasing, without beating yourself up. And how do we get more curious so that you grow your leadership presence and get the growth, achieve the growth that feels satisfying and is sustainable for you? So Anonymous, thank you for the question. And if you go to that link, you will have more information. If you book a consultation, I'll be able to walk you through and offer you your unique blueprint to confidence and help you see if this coaching is a slam dunk fit for you or not. Nicole says, I'm just going to read this through. It's a little bit lengthy, okay? Just left my job for taking the time to reset and figure out what I want to do next. I don't think I adequately articulated my value before I left. Now that I'm going to be interviewing for new roles, some of which have asked for former supervisors' contact information. I left in a professional manner and former boss has expressed willingness to be a reference for me. So, okay, I have some thoughts. I'm gonna read the whole thing and then I'm gonna offer you some thoughts. Just question their integrity and judgment. I'm not sure what's the best way to engage with them now. Is it appropriate to try to articulate my value after the fact? Of course. And it's really interesting, Nicole. So Nicole left her job and 7.5 years of transition, strain on her self-esteem. It was tumultuous, but so interesting. Those are your thoughts about what how we perceive the past experience is through a filter of our opinions, our filter of our conclusion about what those 7.5 years were for you, right? But so interesting, even though it was all those things in your mind, your former supervisor, your former boss, expressed willingness to be a reference. So fascinating. Because if it was truly toxic and bad and tumultuous, right? Like, why would they do that? And I want you to consider, perhaps not all of it was toxic. Yeah. And also how you see you is filtered through what you call strain on your self-esteem, but how your former supervisor, your former boss sees you, we don't really know. But we do know they're willing to be a reference. I know you question their integrity and you don't really trust their judgment, but you might get curious about like, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's hear the things that I think I did do well. Oh, okay, wait. I'm thinking a little too fast. I think first, before you have a conversation with the former supervisor or a potential new employer, I think you want to first have a conversation with yourself, right? Because I understand your self-esteem, is, and yeah, that's a tough place to be. And here's what I know from having been a place where I felt like I had very little self-esteem, right? When I was like getting sick all the time and like stressed out and anxious, just that I unconsciously become biased against myself. And when I unconsciously become biased against myself, I unconsciously block out certain memories. And I'm not the only one. All human brains do this. Human brains are filters, right? And I block out certain things that did go well, right? That I did do well, the instances where I did create value, yeah? And so I think that's the first thing. Even before you have the conversation with your former boss or anyone else, it's like, no, let's question that filter. What are the things that you did do well? I'm going to tell you a story. I used to work as a hedge fund analyst about, oh goodness, many years ago, about a decade, no, more than that. 13 years ago. And I had very little self-confidence. I'll tell you more about it in a future email, okay? I had very little confidence. And I was the only woman, the only girl on the trading desk. I hated being called a girl. Like, I'm a Smithy, we're women, right? And I get sick. And I didn't really understand what my true value was to that organization, because I'm like, I don't really have an interest in finance and trading and hedge fund strategies. I'm like, oh, this is not a fit. And then I heard somebody mention, Jamie's the only person at our firm who can speak English, Japanese, and Korean. And we can tell our investors that we have a trilingual analyst. And that was like less than 1% of my job. But I didn't really know that was of value, because it helps to grow the hedge fund's perceived value. So I guess, Nicole, I'm telling you this story because I just want to help like nudge you out of this mindset that that it was all toxic, or that it was, what if you are of more value than you might realize in this moment? And what if your former boss recognized and saw it, right? And that could be one reason they're willing to be a reference. And that could be one reason why, they're like, no, Nicole, like, we let her go, but yeah, I want to keep supporting her. And I think I'm rambling, so I'm going to stop there. And yes, it is always appropriate for you to re-articulate your value to yourself, like from a wider perspective, right? And so that you're more equipped with the confidence to be like, you know what? Yeah, it wasn't such a great experience then, but now looking back, I was actually of more value than I realized. So let's move on. I hope that was helpful. And again, if these are some of the results that you want, I invite you to book your free consultation with me. All right. Anonymous says, I left a hostile work environment several years ago, and getting back in the game is challenging. Yeah, I bet. I can imagine. I want to be sure that I advocate for myself from the outset. So to be sure I'm in the best environment possible. I love it. Yes. Any tips for fresh conversation starter to turn the page with a manager who has been pretty clear my contributions haven't aligned with his? I guess an inquisitive question, but I'm used to being appreciated and seen, but for the first time in my career, I'm misaligned and losing confidence. Perfectionism and tiara are two patterns I need to bust. Thanks for naming them, a fellow Smithy. So I would encourage you to think about, like, there was an elephant in the room, anonymous Smithy, right? The elephant in the room, that there is misalignment. And what if you address it, you called it out, just like that? Say, hey, my intention here is to work with you. I want to be aligned so that so that I am adding value, so that I am helping you and the company achieve the goals that we have together, right? What am I missing? Where could the misunderstanding or the misalignment be? I mean, I think that would be a question that I would want to ask if I were in your shoes. And here's a tip for you. Before you have that conversation with the manager, I would encourage you to ask that question to yourself first. Like, I sense that there's a misalignment. And if I were to trust my guts on this, if I were to trust my intuition, where do I think a misalignment could be? Where could that misalignment be, right? And so that this way, when you go to that conversation with your manager, you're saying, hey, this is what I think, but I'm also willing to hear your thoughts. I mean, I'm genuinely curious. I'm here to listen, right? And Anonymous says, will we get the recording? Yes, you will. Yes. You want to re-listen before the consult. The session has triggered a lot of things for consideration. I'm glad. I mean, we're in coaching. That's what we'd be like, okay, let's bring it up. And now let's work through it. Let's come to a resolution. Let's arrive at solutions that work for you. Jerry just booked a consult with me next Monday. Thank you so much for your podcast and for this webinar. You're most welcome, Jerry. I most look forward to speaking with you next Monday as well. I love it. All right. Brandy says, for the Smithy who is misaligned, is it possible she's in the wrong environment? I think we should be wary of contorting ourselves to fit into the wrong role, especially if it doesn't align with our career goals. Yes, Brandy, I think that's a really valid point. Yeah, you know, I think that's a really valid point. It could be, yeah. I mean, one solution, if you really feel like there's a misalignment, it's like, maybe there could be a different role. Like one of my clients, her win was extricating herself, getting herself out of working with a particular manager whom she felt was always cutting her down, was not supportive, like she did not enjoy working with this particular manager. And it took a lot of guts for her to advocate for herself and say, I would like to be removed from this project. She was met with pushback. That particular manager, made some comments. And for her, the win was not like giving in. It wasn't like folding in or conceding or assuming, oh my gosh, she said these things and they must be true. No, through coaching, she developed the wherewithal to be like, oh, that's just her opinion. I drive my career. I am plenty valuable. Yeah. And so, Brandy, thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a really, really valid point. Yeah. So I invite y'all to book a free consultation with me if you want to dive deeper. Jerry, I look forward to speaking with you next Monday. Anonymous Smithy, thank you so much for your comments and your question. Nicole, and Christina, Cassandra, Paige, Sasha, Jahanara, I hope I'm saying your name right, and please excuse me if I'm not. Marisol, Hasna, Cassandra, I said your name. Tracy, yeah, awesome. Okay, so unless there's anything else, any other question? Yeah, Brandy, I look forward to speaking with you too. Yeah, awesome. All right. So I guess I want to leave it with, the world is so far from perfect. It is broken. All we have to do is look outside the window. I'm in New York City, so there's a little bit of Canadian wildfire smoke outside. I can see it out, in my outside the window. The world is far from perfect. So are your managers. So are our workplaces. That doesn't mean that we give up. That doesn't mean that we concede the power that we have to speak up, to create change, to advocate, to negotiate, to create opportunities for the kind of growth and satisfaction that we can have in our careers and in our lives. And that's why this work is so important to me. Yes, closing the wage gap, that needed to happen like 100 years ago. We're still working on it. Yeah, it's important. But more than that, it's about how can smart, competent, ambitious women, how can we manage what we can manage? How can we effect change where we can effect change? Starting with our own brains, starting with our communication, starting with how we engage with people, starting with how we see ourselves in control and in power of our careers and our lives, right? so that we do take those risks, so that we do engage in conversations, so that we do feel more confident, so that we do have more ease. Yeah. And I think it's something that will create this ripple effect of change, starting with our own satisfaction, right? Having moved ourselves from anxiety, regret, feeling like, we're not good enough, to like, no, I do know I am enough. I do know that I am of value. Just as who I am. So that the world doesn't have to change, but we do. And when we do, right, when we change our brains and we change our behaviors, we change our negotiation, we change our self-advocacy, we change our leadership, now we're better equipped to help people who want the change that they want. We're better equipped to help heal, to help fix the world. So that's my soapbox. I hope you enjoy this webinar. And yes, I will continue to meet you through the newsletter. I will definitely send you the replay within the next 24 hours. Thank you for those who booked a consultation. I look forward to speaking with you, and we'll talk soon. All right. Bye.